Hey there, everybody. My name's Devin,
And I'm Kevin.
and welcome to the Man to Man podcast, where me and Dad talk about everything the world has to offer. Today, the first thing we'll be talking about is, Dad, if you could go anywhere in the world without any restrictions, whether it be money or, maybe the area is a little dangerous, um, without anything holding you back, where would you go?
Anywhere in the world, no restrictions, no money, no capability restrictions either.
None, nothing.
I think I would want to go to the bottom of the ocean.
Like a Mariana Trench situation?
Yeah, like 20,000 leagues under the sea. There's no telling what's there. Um, yeah.
Okay, like it would just be you, you'd be swimming down there, you'd be like in a little submarine.
Well, if I could do it by myself, yeah, without a submarine, I'd get in there and swim.
How somewhere you still have to obey like the laws of physics and like normal survival
Oh,
things, but you
okay.
can go anywhere. Normal restrictions don't apply, but you're still like a guy going somewhere out in
Well
the
then,
world.
well then I'd go in a submarine.
Okay,
A submarine that could go all the way down to the bottom with
we don't
light,
even know
and I
what's
would have
down
light.
there.
I know that's why I would want to go.
You might not come back.
Oh, well, you didn't say I wouldn't come back.
I don't think have humans ever reached the bottom of the ocean,
No,
like really explored it. I don't think so.
no, I don't think so either. But that would be cool. I mean, I think they're still discovering things the deeper they do go, different life forms, and yeah. So another place, I guess. All right, if that's too far fetched, another place would be maybe inside one of the pyramids,
Of
like a,
Giza?
e- well, of Egypt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And see like, because I've never been. I know that they've explored those, but I've never been.
Yeah, are you able to actually like go inside of them if you're a tourist in the pyramids or
I don't
no? They don't
know.
even let you like I think most of it's all super protected. Like they
Yeah,
they have it all almost sectioned off to where you're not allowed to, get near like the steps of the pyramid or anything.
probably so because people would do something stupid like write their name on it or,
Yeah.
yeah, they probably ruin it. So, yeah. I don't, yeah, maybe it's not you're not allowed to, but
But you get like a VIP pass
yeah, I mean, if,
to go
I would say, hey, I'm on a mission here. So, yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. Although I've always seen all the people that go to Egypt to try and visit there, like all the tourists and stuff. There's all these people that are like locals that stay out, stand outside and they're like, "Oh, do you want?" They'll try and like force you into a camel ride, or they'll force you into. It's like those people on the streets that try and take pictures with you and then make you pay for it after, even though you didn't even want a picture.
Oh, like the guy in the French Quarter that says, hey, I bet you I can tell you where you got your shoes.
Yeah, yep. All the
Yeah.
con men out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just gotta look out for that. But I don't think they're in the pyramids. Although I don't know, you don't. They might have made it in there.
Well, yeah, you never know. I've never been. So, yeah, I think it'd be cool. Well, you asked that question because what about you? Is there a place you would like to go?
If I could go anywhere, it would probably be somewhere just that has like a natural landmark or something, like something that you can't go anywhere else in the world to see it. Um, so I mean, for me, just I don't know if I could just name one place. Like I've always been interested in the like all the national parks that we
Yeah.
have here in like the U.S. or um, because there's I think just those natural landmarks have something else to them. Because it's cool to see something man-made, because like, oh, we built that and it looks really cool. But like the fact that something just exists in the world and looks that cool, I think would be really like even I guess maybe like where's Old Faithful at? Is that Yellowstone?
It's Yellowstone. Yeah.
Yeah, like Yellowstone would be really cool
Yeah.
to go to. See all the
Yeah.
geysers
And
and
it is pretty amazing. I mean, we've been to a few national parks across the country, and I mean, you see that in pictures, but it's not the same as being there. And it is kind of, you get a little awestruck when you see stuff like that.
Yeah.
nature in its purest form.
Yeah. Either that or I think it would just be cool if I was to go see something for maybe like a cultural aspect behind it, instead of like a natural landmark, natural, formation or whatever. Probably be Japan. I just think Japan has all of the I wouldn't want to go to like Tokyo. I would want to go to where they have the old architecture, old Japanese architecture, and the temples and the shrines and all of that just all look really cool to me. I think the people there are much different than in the US. The people there have a different different culture, but also just like the way they go about their lives is very different. So it would just be interesting to be involved in that,
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that
immersed.
too. Yeah, I've heard that as well. I've had some family members that have either lived in or been to Japan, and they've said, yeah, that kind of their daily life is it's not a whole lot different, but their beliefs, their family structure, their values, I think are a little bit different than I guess most of America.
Yeah, they're very, what's the word? Like we're very individualistic society here in the US. They're much more about like they're like an ant colony. Like you're contributing to the whole of society. You're much more they I think they kind of frown on people being more individualistic.
Hmm. Yeah, more of the betterment of the whole.
Yeah, over oneself. Yeah.
Yeah, there was
Okay.
actually a movie about a car manufacturer. I think it was like a 1980s movie, and that's what it was about. A Japanese company took over an American factory, car factory somewhere, and of course the workers were all worried that we're losing our identity, but they ended up building a better team with kind of their work ethic and their values that they brought. So yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot the name of the movie, but all right.
Okay.
Well, I got one. I got them here. So in our last podcast, you mentioned that I'm kind of more of a pragmatic thinker, and you tend to focus on the philosophical.
Yeah.
So I have a philosophical question for you, and this is one I don't know if our listeners or our viewers have heard this before, but this is kind of a classic philosophical question, and it's called the trolley problem. And there's a
Mhm.
few different versions of this, but essentially it's the same message or the same context. So I'll read you the scenario and then there's a question at the end. So you see a runaway trolley moving towards five people that are tied up or otherwise incapacitated on the tracks. You're standing next to a lever that controls a switch. If you pull the lever, the trolley will be redirected onto a side track, and the five people on the main track will be saved. However, there is a single person lying on the side track. So you have two options. The first is you can pull the lever and one person dies and five people don't, or you can do nothing and the trolley will, of course, kill the five people. So some of the other variations are, you have been identified as the single donor for five people. One person needs two lungs, one person needs a kidney, one person needs a liver, one person needs a heart, and whatever. Basically, there's five people that you are the only donor, the only match for them, and they will all die within 6 months if you do not provide your organs to them. And so, the question is what do you do?
Oh, that's different because now I'm on the line. Like I wasn't the guy on the
Yeah.
track before.
Well, that's right. Yeah, the second scenario kind of makes it a little more personal, right? So, you have to sacrifice. The first scenario with the train tracks is you're not necessarily sacrificing anything, but you're making a conscious decision
Yeah.
and you're determining the outcome of an event, which, brings the question, should you?
Okay, well, let's do the first one first. So the track and yeah, really the point of contention here, the thing that makes it difficult is the fact that you are making a decision. It's like if you let nature take its course, you let the train hit five people, the five people will die.
Yep,
Um, you could save, you could have a net save of life of four people by pulling the lever, but then you're the person that's basically killing the other guy.
that's right.
Um, that of course I have heard this question before. I think I probably would pull the lever from a from the perspective of if I don't even know any of these people, then like I guess saving more lives is better than killing more people. So even though I'm the guy making that decision, it's just overall for the good of everybody except for the guy on the track. It's
Yeah.
it helps out more. Um, but yeah, I think I probably would pull the lever.
Yeah, so that leads into, I guess, we can and should affect the future based on our own kind of take on what's better or worse, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean that question comes up in war a lot. I mean, we were just talking about Japan. At the end of World War II, we dropped
Yeah,
two
is it?
massive, right? And
Yep.
and there was a lot of controversy at the time as we're intentionally, I wouldn't say intentionally, but we know that there are going to be civilian casualties when we drop these bombs, right? But is it for the better good? And, looking back at history, I think most people, especially this far gone, would say, yeah, it was determined that kind of made the emperor surrender and it ended, the war in the Pacific. But I would venture to say that there's probably still a lot of people that say, no, there's a higher power at work here, and you don't have the right to determine that. And so,
Yeah. Well,
I would,
I've heard the trolley problem referenced most in relation to self-driving cars. That's like the biggest thing that I've heard it used for because the whole idea that if a car is presented with, because
oh,
it
yeah,
has to make that decision. If we're letting robots make these kind of decisions and there's only two options, swerve out the way to save five people in the middle of the street, but you got to kill the guy on the sidewalk, or do you just hit the five people? And that's I think where it's actually it goes beyond a just a thought experiment because we are nearing a point where we have to program these machines to actually make that decision when it comes to it.
yeah, and that's scary. Yeah. So what do they do? I mean, do you leave that programming out of it and say, well, the computer can't take an action? The computer has to not choose between the lesser of two evils or and make the driver decide? Because I think that's the default, right? Is to do nothing.
Yeah, do nothing, and then if
And
do nothing is the worst option, then it's just how it is.
that's just
Which
how
I
it
guess
is.
in the long run, I mean, evens out. Like if if this situation was to occur like 100 times, maybe the five people on the sidewalk 50% of the time, and the one guy's in the street 50% of the time. You know what I mean? And it flip flops. So like over time, you are probably not saving any more. Oh no, you probably would still be saving more lives if you do always choose
Yeah.
the one guy. But I've
Well,
always heard a
yeah.
spin on the problem though of I think most people tend to make the decision of saving more people, even if they have to be the one to do it, and killing choosing the lesser of the evils. But what happens when either you change the descriptions of the people that are on the track. So it's like, do you kill five grandmas to save a child, or do you? What if it's your family member? What if it's one family member and five people you don't know on the track?
Yeah, you start to throw in kind of some personal bias or personal, investment in some of that. Yeah. And what if the one person turns out to be Ted Bundy?
Yeah, no, yeah.
You
Well, I
just
think that's why it's easier to make the choice of saving more people's lives overall because you don't know if you have completely like I guess dehumanized the people in the problem, as in like you
yeah,
don't know anything
yeah.
about them. Um, you might be the one guy that you decide to save by like just letting the train keep going might be like the next Hitler or something. You never know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many variables you can add to it. And I think that's why you kind of have to look at it without any of that addition to it. You have to look at it totally objectively and just say, well, they're all six people have the same qualities and are of the same value, I guess, right?
Hmm.
And then kind of make your decision. But yeah, interesting. I started researching topics for this podcast and I came across this one and I thought it was interesting just because it's so theoretical, right? Um,
You probably
eh,
won't ever be on the track. You probably won't ever be like
yeah,
right next to the lever and watching it play out in front of you.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's true. You don't know the outcome of what you're doing. You probably have several layers of separation between you and that, the decision you make and the effects of it. But yeah,
Okay, well, before we get off this, I wanted to ask you one more thing about this question specifically. So for
okay.
you, if there's one person on the track and it's one of your loved ones, and there's five people on the track that are in the line of the train that are going to be killed, or rather, your family member is on the track, the train's coming at them, but you can pull the lever and it'll go towards the five people. Do you pull the lever?
Oh yeah, every time.
Yeah. Okay. How about 10 people?
Yeah,
50,
yeah,
100? What's the
yeah.
number
I
where
don't
you
think
would,
there is a number. No,
what about the
because
whole world? 1
um,
billion people or a loved one.
yeah. To what extreme do you take it, right? Um, yeah. I don't think I would ever sacrifice um one of my family members for the benefit. If it was me, it was different because I can make that decision for myself. But no, I
Yeah.
don't think I sacrifice my loved ones for any number of people.
Yeah, me neither. I would go with even an extreme route of like, an eighth of the world, like 1 billion people die, but you can save one person because you don't. I mean, if it's 1 billion people you don't even know.
Well, and here's
So,
here's my justification for that is if there is a higher power, right? And you have spirituality or a religion about you, um, you've been given that choice for a reason.
mm,
If it would have been somebody with a different frame of mind, then they would have been put in that situation and given that choice. But it was me, and I know the stakes, and God or the higher power, whatever you're calling, um, has given you the opportunity to make that decision. So make it. Yeah.
got you. Yeah, mine's has always been. Uh, I think that we both come to the same conclusion. My reasoning has always been I know like the people that are in my life, I know who they are and like if they're a good person and everything that they have about them. And I don't think I'm a very cynical person, but there's definitely a lot of people out in the world who are much less valuable than the people that I know are in my life, like, my loved ones. So just logically, I can save one person that is guaranteed to like provide to the world, do good things or possibly save like half of the 1 billion people could all be, murder terrorists,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yep. And then that's your fault.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
good question. Good discussion.
All right. Well, my next question for you is kind of I think all my questions are kind of in the same area of just like probing your mind about certain things. But if you could meet any historical figure from any time in history, like um, you're like either they come to your time period, or you go to their time period, and you can just sit down and have a conversation with them. Who would it be?
Mm. Wow, that's like one person out of, you know,
Yeah.
uncountless numbers. I can think of a few. If I thought on it longer, I would probably come up with more, but there's a couple that I can think of right off the top of my head. And I've always kind of thought this. So I've had this question before. We've talked about this before. So, and hear me out. Don't judge me with my first response, but Adolf Hitler,
Okay. Well, you don't
because
speak German.
no, I don't
No,
speak
but you can
German.
understand him. You can
Yeah,
understand him
okay.
for
We got a
the
translator, right?
yeah.
Because, and a lot of people study, the mind of a serial killer or the mind of, some of these thwarted people that just, they have something sick about them. There's something that, you know, is, does not fall in line with the rest of society. And to be able to talk to somebody like that, I've never met anybody like that, not that I know of. Um, So, how do they think and what drives them to do what they do or be the type of person that they are? So that would be one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because who knows? I mean, and again, not to try and justify it, but just or maybe not even to understand it, because I don't know that I would ever understand intentions like that, but just to hear it and say, wow, that's where you're coming from.
Well,
Um,
doesn't Hitler kind of have all of his stuff outlined in his book? Isn't kind of Mein Kampf like basically his own
his manifesto.
manifesto of
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and reading that is one thing, but to have a two-way conversation, be able to ask questions, you could probably shape how he says what he says, right?
Hmm.
A little bit differently and ask some clarifying questions. But yeah, because when you
Gotcha.
write a book, when you write a manifesto like that, I mean, it's one directional, and you flow the conversation or the story how you want it to flow, and you tell your story. So I think there's a difference in having a conversation, vice, reading what somebody has written. Um, Trying to think of another one. You know, world leaders is some of the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, what is the general composition of the people that you have in your head? It's like that, like world leaders, like
World
people that have
leaders,
had lots of power in their lives at some point.
well, there's those types of people, and then there is the people like Albert Einstein, and there's many more,
You
in
need to
that.
learn German
Yeah, a lot
because
of
you're not gonna
interesting
understand any of
German
these
people in
people.
history, right? But I mean the minds of people like that to try and get in them and understand them would, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those people probably wouldn't be good conversationalists because they think so deeply.
Yeah.
I just picture Albert Einstein, just with whiteboards all over the place with equations and math problems and science problems and all this stuff going on that, and I could be wrong, but not really much of a, hey, let's just talk about things. I think he tries to get to a point and figure things out, but um,
They tried to kick him out of school, Albert
no,
Einstein. They
no,
told I think they came to his parents and told him that he was he needed to go to special education because he would write all of his papers upside down. Like all the letters would be upside down because he was
wow,
so bored that to just do something like just because he was so bored, he would just write all of his essays and everything upside down.
Well, I think I have heard that before. Yeah, it's, he would complete everything early and kind of,
Yeah.
well, what do I do now? You guys are not challenging me, right? Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe
Okay.
some other figures would be some, well, like I said, Adolf Hitler is a unique one because he was a leader and he was also a sick individual.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it too, the mind of the criminal, and maybe some explorers like Lewis and Clark.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Just the way that they describe like their adventures, because it's, for them they were going into the unexplored.
Yeah,
It's like, how do they talk about what they saw out there? How do they describe it? Um, or like, even like Christopher Columbus coming across,
yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine that. I don't think we do much exploring. Well, maybe that's not true. We're still exploring space, but that's a small
yeah,
number
it's
of
the last
people.
frontier, so they
Yeah.
say, final
And then
frontier.
like we talked about earlier, the under the ocean. There are people
Hmm.
still exploring under the ocean. But I couldn't imagine being one of those people that just gets on a boat with a crew and says, "Hey, we're going to go find the next landmass. We think we know. We're kind of going that way, but and
Yeah, well, because back then, like when it really was, they were pushing into an unexplored frontier. The
yeah,
idea was, I think that you can actually fund exploration more back then because there actually is like a monetary gain. Like if you can find a piece of land and put your flag down, well now you own it. That's all it took back then. Like this is your land now.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but nowadays, because there is a ton of unexplored stuff still, like on the planet, I think they say that we only have about 20% of the insect species that are in the world actually documented. Because there's so many of them out there, like in the Amazon rainforest and just in areas that humans really don't have a point to go looking for them because there isn't actually really much of a from a monetary standpoint, who's going to fund you to just go, oh, look at this little, variation of the cricket that I
yeah,
found.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Does it need to have a monetary value? Are there still people that are just exploring just for the sake of, new knowledge? Yeah,
Oh yeah, well, I think that's most of the people who probably do it now are just doing it of their own volition. But of course, you got to have the time, you got to have the expertise, you got to have the
yeah.
equipment.
And you got to eat, so you have to have some kind of money.
Yeah, yeah. So your turn to ask me a question.
Oh, okay. All right. So I gave you a philosophical one. Now I want to kind of get your thoughts on a real world question. So, and talking generally, world events, recently and in the recent past, there's been a lot of, um, I guess, economic terrorism, war, right? There's the ongoing war in Ukraine, um, terrorist attack in New Orleans just last week, and the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. We're hearing about the probabilities of trade embargoes with China and other countries when President Trump takes office. We've got the ongoing border issues. We've got drone sightings along the East Coast that a lot of people can't explain.
Hmm.
So, with all that, what do you think the biggest challenge facing America is today? Um, Whether that's, well, I'll leave it to you, and then maybe we'll focus down. But just generally, what do you think the biggest challenge to America as a whole is today?
Okay. Well, I don't think it's a an international issue. I think it is domestic, and I think that it's more a problem of um, unifying everybody, not everybody, but unifying enough people to actually support our country against threats. Because I don't think the issue is, if whoever tried to wage war against America, we have, the largest expenditures into uh, our military, I think, out of any nation, right? That's America has that, and we have one of the biggest militaries. We are the world superpower.
Yeah.
Um, so we can deal with whatever threats are coming to try and um, harm the nation, but it's so difficult to get people actually within the nation to actually just support, like be okay with. There's not that many patriots out there anymore, like that actually want to be here. And it's not like there's enemies of the state within every community, but it's like they don't. It's people that don't even want to support their fellow American, but also just like America as a whole. So I think that really it's the polarization of Americans and how they're pitted against one another, and that ultimately weakens what could be something that should be like a country that should be completely impenetrable, should be strong enough to withstand anything. Especially considering how much money we put into protection from outside threats.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So you think it's the internal, I guess, call it bickering, um call it a difference in values maybe between Americans?
Yeah, and I think it goes and I actually think it goes beyond values because the issue is not conflicting values. It's the it's if someone has a different value than you, then attributing all of these negative ideas and pinning it onto somebody just because they disagree with you on a certain topic. And the media plays into it, the internet plays into it. Um, I think there are outside forces that intentionally want to keep Americans divided, um, and put into different camps and keep them on different sides because it weakens everything. Like you had mentioned, like these terrorist attacks that we've had, or uh, just these threats that have occurred from you know foreign foreign countries, or terrorist groups have come to attack America, but immediately the conversation goes to what policies from certain political parties have allowed this issue to occur.
Yeah, it's the finger
Um,
pointing, right? Yeah.
yeah, and the fingers are not being pointed at people outside the U.S. They're being pointed at officials, government officials, and um, people who have held office. Which, there is some fault there, I'm sure, but it's it's not like we're working towards solutions. We're
Yeah.
trying to pin off the blame.
Well, you mentioned one thing and we talked about um I'd mentioned terrorist attack, the one in New Orleans, and throw this out at you. I think terrorism has kind of taken a more broad meaning to us here in America. Um, first time we kind of talked about terrorism as a general principle was um, in on foreign land, a
Mm-hmm.
terrorist attack, a car bombing, right? We in our history, 9/11 was the biggest. I would say, you had the Oklahoma City bombing, you've had others, but the most recognized, the most publicized terrorist attack within the United States was 9/11, and it was a foreign entity. It was a foreign enemy. I think what we're seeing now is more, I don't know about more, but there are now, I think, people in this country that I don't know that they're necessarily tied to a foreign enemy. Um, they've created an enemy from within. Maybe they're sleeper cells and there is a bigger organization that lives outside of the US that maybe is assisting them or providing them with maybe a little bit of guidance and funding. But I think there are people in this country that truly want this country to fail. It's mind-boggling to me, but I think they've been cultured by certain groups, um, and they've kind of led themselves down this mission to hurt the security, the ability of people in America to be safe. And I think a lot of them don't really understand why they're doing it, but they feel a sense of purpose. And I don't know that they always directly tie themselves to a foreign enemy. It's a concept now, I think. And I think that's something we've seen more in the past maybe 20 years um,
Yeah.
than ever. I mean, but like you said, we're not united. Um, my what I always heard growing up was like up until the probably the 50s or maybe even the 60s is the majority of Americans felt a sense of um, pride in country, I guess, and of course World War II solidified a lot of that. But I think since then, um, we as a society have kind of accepted people that, well, even though you live here, you don't really like it. And I don't, it's just strange, but um, yeah. So interesting to hear you say that it's the division within us is
Yeah.
probably our biggest challenge. Because I would agree that that leads to all the other issues.
Yeah. Well, I think that the division is what breeds these people that hate the country that they were born and raised in, and um, exacerbates issues that may be maybe real things, but like in the nation, like maybe, a certain degree of, there's a lot of people who think that there's systematic racism within the US. And on a broad, just from my perspective, on a broad scale, not necessarily, but definitely, I'm sure in some smaller communities or certain places, there probably might be. Um, but it's creating such a big deal out of these issues to where these people think that the country's against them. They feel isolated from their own country because there's so many things, there's so many, so much media and so many actual people that are telling them, yeah, nobody is your fellow Americans are not here to support you. And so they almost make themselves into the enemy because they feel like they aren't a part of a nation that cares about them, which
Yeah.
is, you know, and that's what other nations, that's what all the foreign threats want. That's what everybody other than, anybody that's against America wants Americans to not feel like they are a part of something um that matters. They don't want to be a part of a nation that cares about them.
Yeah. And the terrorist attack in New Orleans, specifically, back to our discussion about, you know, for the greater good, right? I mean, I wonder if that individual that did that really thought he was pulling the lever, right? Like, hey, there are, I don't know how many people in this street in this city, but I am pulling the lever and sacrificing them for this greater good, whatever he thought that greater good was. Um, of course, they're still investigating it, but will we ever know? Like, what is that? What did he think the greater good was? Is it the demise of America? I mean, that's just odd to me. I don't understand that of how somebody that does something like that, what is their goal? And they're not even, like the suicide bombers, you have a principle that you're standing up for, supposedly, right? But you're not living to see it happen. You're trusting in what others are telling you,
You would
and they're
have
not,
to think that whatever you're doing is righteous in some way to make yourself a martyr
yeah.
for whatever cause that you think you're fighting for or trying to progress in a certain way. But I
And I don't
think the
know if you
only way
know,
to
maybe somebody can leave in the comments when they're listening to this is, what is that greater good? What do they actually get out of the demise of America? Um,
yeah, and to lead to get to that frame of mind, like it you can't I think it takes a lot of effort to convert somebody, a regular, normal guy into somebody that to go to the lengths of harming a large number of people to progress whatever this ideology is. Um, there, it doesn't. If somebody texted me on my phone, "Hey, it's time to go
yeah,
out there and commit these atrocities," I wouldn't do it. There has
yeah.
to be like this conditioning.
There's a long game in there somewhere. Yeah,
And so what are the methods that these people are being conditioned in this way um and to the point, and that's what I think the biggest thing is for me is that to the point where you would go out of your way to harm all these other people because unless you were born some kind of psychopath, you probably do have some degree um of appreciation for human life.
yeah. Character,
So
morals. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So even if you do subscribe to this ideology of America's pitted against you and that all this other stuff to the point where, oh well, now I'm going to take other people's lives. You have to I think you have to be a little crazy. So how are these people going so crazy? Who's
And
making
in
them go crazy?
yeah, innocent lives too. Because
Yeah.
we as Americans, we have a military, and that military takes lives when they need to. Um, but I don't know. Maybe we're conditioned in that, we are a great country, and I always try and take myself out of and not not out of my current situation, but maybe out of context and say, hey, let me try and step back and make sure that I'm on the right track. And I have done that several times throughout my life to say, okay, well, look, these are my beliefs, and let me question them. And I always come back to, this is a good country. The people in it are righteous in our basic ideologies and beliefs. Um, but I try and understand what's going on out there just to be able to know, am I wrong or are you wrong? Um, and I just never can understand this hatred of a country like ours. It just boggles my mind. And I've read some of the preachings of some of these people, and I won't get into certain groups or religions or whatever, but they'll say, well, America is evil because it's trying to colonize, right? It's trying to change cultures in other places. But I think I draw the line when, we don't use military force or, you know, deadly actions um, unless provoked, unless we are under a threat, a direct threat. We don't send we as no America has never claimed, hey, we as a country claim that suicide bombing or that event, right? We don't do that. And I think that's the difference is, they are that committed to whatever that cause is that they would commit acts like that, um, for their greater good, whatever that may be.
Yeah. I mean, I do think throughout history, America has done some really, really bad things. I mean, whether it's the selling of arms in the Middle East that Reagan admitted to,
Well, but
the
let me just cut you off. And I agree. America was an experiment by a small group of people that expanded into more diverse people, but it has adjusted to that. But the government as a whole, like, I don't think you would ever hear the president of the United States do a press conference and say, "Yep, we're behind that. We agree." There have been people that have made poor decisions. Um, but when it comes back to, the United States stance on something, they have always, and I say they, the government as an official statement has always sided on, well, no, that was wrong, or we made a mistake here, and we should have done this. And, I don't ever remember a time in our history where the United States government official stance was in support of something that was wrong in most of the world's eyes.
yeah. I mean, I think that we are a bit biased on that, of course, as Americans, and also just the fact that there are so many countries that America's best interest is also in their best interest. So you may not hear
Yeah.
that perspective. But what I was trying to get at is
Yeah,
that I
sorry.
think that America has done very many bad things in its time as, as we've been around being a world superpower and such. But I think that that is because the whole essence of America is, for the people, by the people. And I think that what makes us human is the fact that within each person is they have the ability to either do an extreme amount of good or evil. And so the fact that America is created by people for like it is the most I don't know the word you would use there, but I guess pluralistic of any nation. The fact that there are so many conflicting ideas and so many people that make up this entire nation, it is it makes sense that that essence of people would be the essence of our nation, which is America, I think, has the ability to do the most good out of any country in the world because it has so many people that make it up. But also, it does have the capabilities to do very bad things. And I think that maybe for some groups or some people out there, they're scared of that, or they'd rather it be they'd rather be more closely tied to their strict ideologies and ideas because so many other countries have these religions or these ideologies where everything's such much more set in stone or strict in how things are supposed to work. In America, there's just so much. There's so many different ways that people think here. Um, and like it is the American experiment. And so far, I think it's been working. I think that overall America has done good for the world. Um, but at the end of the day, yeah, it is an experiment. We're still figuring out how this thing works and what the effects are on the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that that uncertainty, I guess, of what America is capable of or what they may do with their capabilities, these people that want America to be divided prey upon this uncertainty to cause individuals to um, it's isolate themselves from their nationalistic views. They want them to not be Americans. They just want them to be people living in America.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
did you
I
have
kind of
another one?
asked I had my two that I really wanted to go over. Did you have one more that you wanted to talk about?
No, that was it. I just had two. I figured those would drive plenty of conversation.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we had a good long conversation today.
All right. Well, yeah. So, um, to our listeners or viewers, if you have comments, add them. I'd love to hear from you. Always open to different viewpoints and thoughts. And then if you have some topics that you think we should talk about, drop them in the comments. Let us know, and we'll bring them up. Absolutely, and we'll give you Kevin and Devin's take on it.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, this has been the Man to Man podcast. I'm Devin.
I'm Kevin.
I'll see you next time.
All right.